I think we do a tremendous job supporting our community, but the growth, I think, has come from reinvesting in the business. I don't have hobbies outside the business. I don't have a second home. It's all invested because 27 dealerships and 6 collision centers and a couple other little car business ideas like the parts warehouse have all come from first generation. Unless you inherit it, it's not quite so easy.
A big thank you to our sponsors for making today's episode possible: Open Lane, Car Dealership Guy News, and Uber for Business. And now let's get into the show.
Fred Beans on the CDG podcast. Fred, welcome.
Thank you. Glad to be here this morning.
I posted about you this morning. I actually asked the audience, I've over 550,000 followers across all platforms. And I just said, hey, does anyone have any questions for Fred Beans? He's been in the business for 65 years. Over 27 dealerships, the largest dealer-owned parts operation in the country, which is I find fascinating, and we'll dig into that. How do you do it all? How'd you get into this? What's going on?
Well, I was very lucky. I was raised on a farm during World War II, where it wasn't an abundant society. It was a work society. And I guess in that age group, it was cars and airplanes. And, there wasn't all the other side things. So, I got very interested in cars being raised on a farm because I wasn't into cattle, and I really was into the tractors and driving a tractor and getting to use that. That probably easier work on a farm. So the background came from the farm, and then the interest in cars. And my dad worked part-time in the winters for a farm equipment dealer. When I used to spend a lot of time with my dad on Saturdays, I go to work with him on Saturday, and I got real interested. Then I went to Rider College, and I worked in a service station. And the guy decided that he didn't want the business, and I got the opportunity to buy it. And of course, I was 20 years old. I applied to BP Oil Company. They didn't ever investigate my age, and I never told them. I needed $5,500. I had $124 to my name and a car. And my dad didn't want to co-sign a note because he didn't want to look bad for him. But he said, your mother will go with you on Monday. And my mother co-signed a note. And I started in a service station with $5,500 of capital. And I worked very, very hard. I built it up to about 12 people. I had it for 12 years. I had a rental car business, national rental car franchise, and I got up to about 37 cars. And then National had a rental car leasing program, and I got up to 75 cars that I leased to customers around the vicinity of my service station. And so I learned a lot, and I was lucky enough to know a small dealer in Newtown that's passed away, Bill Marsh. And Bill Marsh was a very smart guy. He went to Yale Law School. Times were tough for his parents, and he had to quit. He had to quit law school and come home. And I used to go to his dealership and hang around with him at night. And he kept talking to me. And finally, one day, he offered me a 25% partnership. And within 6 months, I was running the small store, did a great job, and I was with him for 3 years. And then I thought, with his Yale brains and my work ethic, we'd find other places and grow. And it was a guy named John.
Quick question. So that was your foray into the dealership business. Is that right? Like before that, you were in a service business separately. Another question before you keep going is, what was it? Because I don't want to just talk cars here. I think you have such a wealth of knowledge that you can bring to the table. So I'm going to ask you some questions that are not necessarily just related to automotive. But what was it like in that era of, late 60s, early 70s, like getting into the car business? Was it taboo? Was it considered like progressive, call it like on the tech frontier today, or finance of, the 80s and 90s? Like, what was it like getting into the car business at that time?
It was very difficult. When I decided that I wanted to be a dealer, I went to General Motors, Chevrolet, and I went to Ford, and I went to Oldsmobile because that was like the car of choice, the Oldsmobile Cadillac. And it was very difficult because if you didn't get past the zone rep, that's as far as you got, you were sort of doomed. So it seemed to me that the entry into the car business was either sons or daughters. And I started to look around I got lucky enough to, the assistant zone manager's Oldsmobile liked me. He gave me a list of all dealers that didn't have any children that were going to enter the business. And I started to go talk to them. So it wasn't easy for an outsider with no money. And now probably virtually damn near impossible.
Yeah. And by the way, that is true. Because I was going to say, it seems like there had to have been so many open points back then, or potential for open points, right? We're going back 40, 50, 60 years. So as you just stated, I feel like this is how lots of people feel nowadays, or up and comers, where they say, you know, you kind of said the quiet part out loud, which is it's almost near impossible to get an open point. You know, there's some programs from some manufacturers and whatnot, but if you want to just become a new car dealer or franchise dealer, it is very, very difficult to break into that space. It seems that what I see is the most, you know, prevalent strategy nowadays for the best performers is they get in with an existing dealership, an existing dealer group. You know, they prove their worth, and then they get a minority partnership opportunity on a future point, right? As an operating partner. That seems to be the most, you know, the surest path nowadays from what I'm seeing. Are you seeing that? Are you seeing anything differently? Or do you?
Oh, I think you're absolutely correct, because when I first became a dealer, you couldn't own a contiguous dealership or another dealership. And now we have 3 Ford stores that are contiguous. Okay. So I think it's more difficult now because there's more wealth out there. There's blue sky that didn't exist in those days. And it took very little money to enter the automobile business. It just took the opportunity. Now I think it's pretty hard.
This is a bit of a personal question, so, you know, kind of feel free to respond or not. But how have you reinvested your wealth throughout this entire time? Like, has it all gone back into the car business, or not all, but the majority? Like, have you really just said, hey, I'm going to grow my dealership footprint? Like, how have you thought about finances, wealth, and growing, you know, your legacy and stuff like that?
Well, I think I've been lucky to have a few good mentors, but it's been and the other thing, I think Warren Buffett said, I'm lucky that I'm not a real young guy, although I'd like to be young. I think there's certain things that come through compounding, and a certain advantage. A guy that dies at 60 or a guy that dies at 40. That 60-year-old should accomplish a lot more, because I think real wealth, unless you get lucky, is probably created after you're 60 years old, not before that. They call it the law of compounding.
And so for you, has that mostly been within automotive, or have you had other interests, anything that, you know, in particular that is, you know, non-automotive where you've, you know, been active in? I mean, you know, who comes to mind, right? Let's just talk Reedman Toll, who's not far from you. You know, they obviously are huge in real estate as, you know, builders, developers. Has anything been on the sidelines, or has it been really focused on automotive, kind of sticking to what you're great at?
I've focused on reinvesting as much as I can in our business, and each month, whatever profit we make, we take out we take the profit, and we take out the tax money, which is a pretty hefty burden today. And let's say we made $100,000, and we're going to put away 30 for taxes. Then we'd have 70 left over. We'd add back depreciation and divide it by 2. And we've saved basically every month 50% of our earnings, so that we'd have money to reinvest. So I've been a believer that the automobile business has been an opportunity to take a guy with very little and grow and support his community. I think we do a tremendous job supporting our community, but the growth, I think, has come from reinvesting in the business. I don't have hobbies outside the business. I don't have a second home. It's all invested, because the 27 dealerships and 6 collision centers and a couple other little car business ideas like the parts warehouse have all come from first generation. And that's a little, unless you inherit it, it's not quite so easy.
So have there been inflection points in your learning curve throughout your time in a business? Meaning, has it been like a consistent kind of small steps, slow and steady, learning a little bit more, getting a little bit wiser, a little bit smarter? Or have there been like very meaningful inflection points in that knowledge where you said like, oh, I met this mentor that took me to the next level? Like how's that growth been for you?
Well, my personal philosophy about life is that we need mentors all the time. And there's a great book called The Station, and it's about a train and the people that get on the train with you. But I think we need to seek out mentors, whether it's in history, whatever. We need to always constantly look for someone to mentor us. If it's a parts business, I think I had a mentor. I went to somebody who was doing a good job and asked them to help me duplicate what they did, and they helped me. And I paid them monthly to come visit with me and work with me, and we developed a very, very good business. I have 370 employees in our parts business.
Give us an overview of your entire business. Like what's like, top line, sales, service, parts. Can you just give us a quick overview?
Well, because I had a service background, I think I always thought that I wanted to be known, when I got a Ford dealership, I wanted to be known as the Ford garage, because that was so important to people then. But it's still important now. And I think if we take good care of our customers in service, and they service with us maybe 3 or 4 years, that builds loyalty as to where they're going to buy their car. They may not even know that, but it's happening automatically. They built a confidence level on us. And I've always wanted to be, when somebody asks, what's it like to do business with Fred Beans, or what was it like to work for Fred Beans? I'd like them to say, it was like friends doing business with friends.
This episode was brought to you by OpenLane, the leading online dealer marketplace for used cars. OpenLane brings you exclusive inventory, simple transactions, and better outcomes, all with the lowest fees in the industry. Dealers love OpenLane because they can find a vast selection of off-lease exclusive vehicles, rental, dealer trades, and more, all combined with a truly transparent process, best-in-class inspections, and easy-to-read condition reports, allowing buyers to bid with confidence. If you're new to OpenLane, you can sign up now and receive a $350 buy fee credit. Learn more at openlane.com or click the link in the show notes below. I want you to dig in a little bit into growing the business, right? And you've focused on a plethora of brands. You built a pretty diverse portfolio. What thought process has gone into that? Has it been opportunistic, the deals that popped up in your local region? Has it been, with the times and the cycles, I want specific brands? Like, how have you even thought about growth?
Well, I thought about growth in a couple ways, but one of the things that to me, is very important, that I work diligently to build our brand. And a brand has to be a brand promise. So I've tried to, when we've expanded, we've tried to buy dealerships that are local, because I would like to have the feeling that when somebody comes into our place of business, that the business says who I am. I have this thought process that you don't have to know a man. All you have to do is visit his home and you'll know everything you need to know about him. What books are on the shelf? What's the house look like? And I want people to know, and it's not an easy job today with competition, to differentiate yourself. And the level of service provided is very difficult. But if we could differentiate ourselves to be like a hotel chain, maybe the Four Seasons, maybe the Ritz-Carlton, but a hotel that has had a tremendous effect on me, and I never got to talk to the people that run it, is the Breakers in Palm Beach, Florida. The people are well-dressed, neat, clean, facility. It always exceeds my expectations if I had the opportunity to go there. So I want to exceed the customers' expectations. I want them to build a brand. I want my name to be a brand promise. And my home phone number, or my cell rather, sits on every salesman's desk. So if a customer is not completely satisfied, and I get these calls all the time, and I'm thankful, because if I get a call from a customer that's not happy, I have a chance to rectify and make a customer for life. I always said, you can't trust somebody until you test them. Okay, somebody say, I give great service, I stand behind my product, but when we don't do the right thing for a customer and they call me and we correct it, I think that there's a trust level that's built. So I've been very close to my customers, very accessible. Even at our size,
is that a byproduct of just the culture you're trying to, instill within your business, or is that indicative of like a leadership challenge with your team, right? Like, why do you do that? That's pretty much what I'm trying to ask you.
When somebody does something wrong here, sometimes I blame it on parenting. Okay, so if you don't mind me joking around, I hope a little bit.
Have fun, have all the fun in the world.
I'd like to think if you bring your son or daughter here and drop them off to work, I'm going to complete the process. Okay. And so I called up at a private school, and we're going to educate the whole man or the whole person physically, mentally, and morally. So we have healthy living committee. We do a lot of things for lunch and learn. We do nutrition, weight loss. So at the end of the day, I want somebody to say, having worked for Fred Beans, I'm a better person today.
And why do you want that?
I think that's, I've been a pretty lucky guy. I started with nothing except good parenting and the farm, which was a tremendous lesson. I think the thing is that we want to leave some type of legacy, some kind of what people have made their mark on you or me, or what kind of obituary do you want to have? And I want to do everything I can not to tarnish my name.
What's your daily regimen? Like, do you read a lot?
I have a reading list. I share with people. As a company, we read books together. So I would say I'm an avid reader and an avid Audible guy. I don't listen to many podcasts, but I think it's the three things that make somebody successful. And we deal with so many young people that come from broken homes today. And that's probably 50% of the American population. So I think that we have to be good mentors, and we have to provide the leadership and the mentoring that they may not have had the chance. I don't think anybody brings a son or daughter home from the hospital and said he's going to work in a gas station or he's going to be a car salesman, or she is. And we have to help them build. It's a big job today. It's a lot bigger than it ever was before. When we used to hire people out of the military, they still were able to adhere to discipline and rules. And now, it's a different society.
You mentioned a stat of, just the percentage of broken families, which it's tough to even think about, right? Because I feel, you said this, right? That so many of society's problems, which impacts everyone, whether, not just automotive, but impacts everyone and everything, starts and ends with parenting. And I feel like there's just so many distractions nowadays that you can really numb. Like back then, way before I was born, I want to believe that there weren't many options in life, which, in a way was there. Again, there's positives and negatives to that. You would just go on this path and, have a family, pick of from 5 to 10 careers, right? Life was much more simple. It feels like today things are way more complicated. And from what I think is lots of the issues would just stem from that. The fact that we don't have that kind of predictability. Everyone is, numbed by all these 50 different things that they can do to distract themselves on a daily basis. So many options with everything. Is that something you're privy to in just the environment you work in, and you see your teams and your employees? How does that impact you?
Well, I think it's definitely, we have to worry about it because it's the outside influence. And what you want to do is, what I want to do is when somebody comes here to work, I want them to build a respect level in our company and a trust level. And in case they didn't have the mentoring that they should have, and I'm not here to prejudge, but I think that we should be that mentor about putting things back, and the chair goes here, and we should have something to look up to. All of us need to look up. And you mentioned mentors a minute ago. You, me, we need to find mentors. If it's learning how to work a computer, you just mentored me on something I didn't know about my computer. Okay? So I think we need to look for these people.
I want to ask you a different question. Ray Dalio, the founder of Bridgewater, he always says that the things in his life that he finds most shocking or surprising are things that he hasn't experienced yet during his lifetime and that happened, before he was born, let's say, right? And so for me, I ask myself, like, the car business today and what we're going through, are things really changing, or are we just so kind of hyper focused on every little thing, due to social media and whatnot? From your perspective, right? Is the car business, what we're going through, is this the same? Is it just the same cycles, right? And I'm putting technology aside. Like, technology is always going to, change our processes, but the human nature and the way we interact is always going to remain the same. Behind the scenes, it's really the same type of levers are being pulled. The tech makes it a little slicker, quicker, faster, great. But is the car business, throughout your last 30, 40, 50 years, like, has the car business meaningfully changed, or is it really still the same car business, just through different cycles? How do you view that?
Well, I think, if you don't mind me speaking about the internet,
Please go.
We think we sell about 70% of the cars we sell are a result of the internet, either through a phone call or an internet lead. And consequently, we sell the same amount of cars maybe that we were selling 20 years ago, but we sell them a lot further away geographically. And it always worries me because if we do our job right, and they're delighted when they leave here, but they have to drive 2 hours back home, will they buy their next car here? So I think I really worry about the loyalty factor, because in the old days, cars were so poorly built that they relied so much on the service, the garage component of it, the repair shop component, that now it's become a little bit more of a commodity. I don't worry about it. I just get in and drive home. It never lets me down. And so I sell the same amount of cars, but I don't sell them in my market as well as I should, as well as I'd like to sell them. So I think that we have to work harder. When you got a guy that lives 2 hours away or 3 hours away, and you sold him a car 3 years ago or 4 years ago, I think you have to have some. How do you bring him back? And the only way you can bring him back is the treatment he got here. He remembers, because I always say nothing good or bad in life is good or bad until it's compared, right? And then we have to hope that that person appreciated the treatment, which might be because of our society changes a little less today, and they just say, to heck with it. I'll go, say, to Target rather than my local store, or I think you understand what I mean. Loyalties, whether it's in a car business or in a grocery business or a dry cleaner, it's an important part of the fiber of our life.
I want to talk a bit more about the tactics of the business. So first things first, we just spoke about the parts department. What led you to build that? And here, I want two separate directions. Or like, was it more of a emotional decision? Like, hey, I came from this world, I know it well, and I'm going to just stick to it? Or was it like a very economic decision? Like, hey, this is a great business line of business. It's an opportunity in the market. Let me jump into it. What was it more for you?
Well, I think when you become a car dealer or a retail automobile dealer, you have so many opportunities that you don't have to develop, that have been given to you. The service business, the used car business, the new car business, okay, the detail business. We have a separate Auto Express. It's sort of like a Pep Boys that we do a great job with, okay, where customers go that don't want to do business with a car. So we had an opportunity. A car dealer has so many opportunities in life. He has local real estate opportunities, which we've done some of it. I wish we could have done more, because what we did was years ago, we helped develop with a few other guys a shopping center, but it's all because of being in the car business. So if you want to talk about the parts business for a minute. Okay, so I wouldn't say that the parts business is for everybody. We have about a $30 million inventory and about a $35 million receivable. So a good day, I never thought that I'd talk about this as a car dealer, but a good day is collecting $2 million. So I'm interested not just in what we sold yesterday, how much do we collect? But here's what I like about the parts business. We were able to detail sort of build a business plan and adhere to it. It's hard to build a business plan. Let's say this Saturday, you want to sell 20 new cars in our Ford dealership, okay, or 20 cars. We used to do that, by the way, but it's not the same today. 15 would be pretty good today.
What is that specific to Ford, you're saying?
Yeah, because Ford has less of the market. Chevrolet only has 7% of the market in Doylestown. So it's not, it's the competition rate. A lot of competition. When I came here, there was no Hyundai dealer, no Nissan, no Subaru, no Hyundai, no Kia. Now they're all here in force, and that's diluted our market. I think the parts business, if you want me to expand upon that, the parts business gave us an opportunity to look at the product we sell and look at the market and say we wanted to go to another market. And we went back and we did mind maps, and we might name it like Project Overhaul. So we'd pick a market that we were weak in, and we would define that market and then put a marketing plan to go there. So the parts department is much more measurable. We can decide what we're going to do tomorrow. We can visit customers where we need customers to visit us in a retail car business.
So the way I think about this is, it's like, again, I'm just going to compare it to real estate as an example, but it's sort of like property management, as property management is to like developing or something, right? It's consistent, it's predictable, it's lower margin, but it's kind of always humming. Would you say that's sort of correct?
Yes. And because of our product, their inventory, and business planning, and being able to be, I don't know, in the retail car business, and I'm sure that people out there are a lot smarter than I am, they can be more strategic about what they're doing. But in our parts business, because of 370 employees, we're pretty strategic. We can put a business plan together, get excited about it. Really, I get excited about it, and I can see it develop. I can't sit in our Ford dealership where my office is at and say, we're going to sell 100 more cars next month. But we can identify the customers, and because we have the inventory now and that investment, it's not a good investment for somebody that's not truly committed to it, because it's a very difficult business. It's a 24-hour-a-day operation. We're not open on Sunday, but it's a 24-hour operation.
This episode is brought to you by Uber. Courtesy transportation is no longer a nice to have, it's a need to have. That's why 80% of dealership respondents agree that providing on-demand courtesy rides with Uber has helped retain customers based on Uber's survey of 79 organizations in 2023. With Central, you can request a ride on behalf of your customers even if they don't have the Uber app. Car dealerships are loving Uber for Business because it's a headache-free solution for offering white glove service and seamlessly handling tasks like pickup and delivery of auto parts and replacing shuttles and loaner cars. Dealers can request one-way or round-trip rides, add multiple riders and locations, and even monitor trips in real time. Plus, you'll get monthly reports to keep track of everything. If you're ready to reduce the costs associated with maintaining shuttles and limit the liability of loaner vehicles, it's time to partner with Uber. Visit t.uber.com/cdgauto today to learn more, or visit the link in the show notes below. How do you think about the future of just dealerships in general? Very kind of, open-ended question, but do you think that we're going to a future where the manufacturers will want to be more direct-to-consumer agency model on the new car side, at least? Do you think that's not going to happen? Like, what's your take on that?
I have mixed emotions. I don't really think it's going to happen because, maybe it's been a while ago, but Ford started out by acquiring dealerships, and a local dealer that's good, puts a lot of money back in his community. He has more influence in Washington, D.C. with politicians than a manufacturer does, because he's a root of the market or a root of a congressman's district. And I feel real good. Well, all our dealerships tithe to a charitable foundation of ours. So each dealership sends a check in every month to our foundation. And we try to put that money back to use in our community. So I think a dealer has a much more effect on a community than people think.
And you think that will promote longevity for the traditional dealer?
I think the longevity thing, and I don't know if it's a society thing, I think it's our easiest days may be behind us. It's certainly not as easy as when I came in the business. I think it was relatively easy because all you had to do was be nice to a customer and sell them a car. I can't tell you how many houses I went to. If we didn't sell a car 30 years ago, we'd go right to the customer's house that night with a car. And we don't do that. That ethic is not out there. If you didn't buy a car and you were here at 2 PM, we'd go to your house and I'd go with my salesman. It was kind of fun. We made good customers doing that.
Times have changed. Have you ever thought about divesting? Like, you've obviously done this for a while, to say the least. Has it crossed your mind at any point?
I think a guy that was raised in my generation, I think I had really good parents with a good work ethic, but I think it was always brought up to believe if we've been given the opportunity, we should take advantage of it. So we've had numerous opportunities to sell, but I always say to my daughter, when you sell something, you don't own it anymore, and you're not going to grow anymore. Now, retirement's it's not part of my makeup. I wouldn't want to sell. I'd want to grow. I think it's my obligation to give back. If you received a lot and you've been blessed, which I think I have, I think it's my obligation to give back. I think it's my obligation to be a good example.
Speaking of, you mentioned your daughter. Can you share a little bit about your succession planning or anything like that could possibly help other people in your position?
We have a leadership advisory board that we put together, and we have some of our key people, our service director, my used car director, my son-in-law who's very active. So we put a pretty good plan together for successorship. Okay, I think that the only beat that I can see that we'll miss is a guy that wants to pick up papers on the floor, put chairs back where they belong. I think some of that discipline will disappear because that's a different generation. But I think we have a solid plan, and it could even grow because I think sometimes founders stymie things. I hope I'm not one of those. I don't think I've been, but I think that my family's in a good position. I just had a grandson enter the business, and I'm very excited about that. And he went to college, and during COVID, he was a very good salesperson, but he went to New York for 3 years and worked somewhere else. So we have a leadership advisory committee for him. So my son-in-law and my daughter and myself aren't involved. We have a controller, a service director, and a general manager in his progression. So it's not, I've seen a lot of dealers anoint their children. It's just not an anointment. This is I guess maybe you want to call it rite of passage, I hope.
For an up-and-comer that has no family ties into the business and wants to grow within the business, what's your advice? Like, what would you recommend someone like that in any position in a dealership?
Well, first of all, if I was an up-and-comer, I'd try to find a dealer that had the structure and the character to help me with my learning process. I wouldn't ask him that. But does he have the character? Does he want to grow? Does he want to help you grow and reach your dreams? Okay.
Find a place, find a home that has the structure for growth.
Right. And that may not be, it might be easier today than it was 20 years ago because all these dealerships were owned by one person. And I think that most people have a life cycle of what they want to do. Maybe they want to be successful and buy a second home and spend time in Florida. That's never been my MO, but I think that's where maybe the difference is, okay? If you do the same thing over and over again with discipline, I think it helps you succeed.
What brands do you believe in, right? If you could acquire any brand right now, or generally speaking, I mean, what interests you the most? What do you think brand is going to be, it's going to keep rising here over this next decade?
We just acquired our first Honda store, and I'm pretty excited about that. We have a small Toyota store, and we have eight Ford dealerships. I think I'm pretty excited about that. I don't have Mercedes-Benz or BMW. I have what I call the working man's franchises. I feel pretty excited about Honda because of the loyalty factor, and I think the company's focused. I think over the years at Ford, we've had different leadership, okay? I have a lot of involvement from the Ford family, but maybe less today. So I worry a lot about Ford because when I came to Doylestown, Ford was the number 2 franchise. And Ford almost got knocked out of second place by Oldsmobile in this market because it was cars. You know, Ford is not the number 1 nameplate. We outsell Ford with Hyundai. My salvation, frankly, is commercial trucks. And we've done a good. So we've been a really, when you joke around a little bit, a niche player. We made niches with a parts department, found a niche and worked at it. And I guess it's like a dealer that finds his niche with used cars and does it. There's guys out there that sell 2 to 1. I wish we were. We're not one of them. And usually it's because he has that background.
When was life better? Was it better 50 years ago with less technology, but arguably, you know, well, I wouldn't even say lower quality of life because maybe it was better. But when was life better? Was it better 50 years ago or today, from your perspective? You can define better however you'd like.
Well, I'm not sure about better, but I feel like there's less the structure in the home, because I think everything comes. If you said, what is my success? I'm glad you asked, by the way. I say it's my mother and my father and the farm. Because on a farm, you learn lessons of life, right? I'm not sure you learn all those lessons of life without a mentor if you have a cell phone. So I think as the work ethic has disappeared, it's not the automobile business that's changing, it's the society's changing. The society is instant gratification today, I think. There's less respect for other people's property. And I might be wrong about that, just what I feel.
Man, I don't think you're wrong. That's why I keep asking you about it, because I'm very curious. You have so much more knowledge and wisdom than me. You've been on this earth so much longer. So it's just interesting to hear it from someone in your shoes, right? I'm in my 30s, so I haven't seen, a smidgen of what you've seen. You mentioned growing up on the farm. Do you still get out to nature a lot? Is that something you do?
Oh, no, I don't. But a farm is a 7-day-a-week job. Okay,
Never ends.
And a farm.
Stops. Yeah.
Yep. And the farm is a return. The results are a return on your efforts. And Covey said the best fertilizer is the footsteps of a farmer. So that exists right here in our car business. Okay. Walking around, looking at things, correcting them, and talking to your people. Other than staying in your office all day, which is not helpful, I don't think.
What are some of the biggest customer pain points nowadays that you and your team are focused on? Like, how is your business evolving today? What are you focusing on?
My personal pain points are the internet lead, the internet phone call that doesn't result in an appointment. Because in order to sell cars today, we have to appoint, and then what happens when they get here? And if they come from a distance and the guy says, I want to go home and think about it, they have a distance to drive now. And I think the chance of coming back are next to nil. So it's earning the business of the customer when they come here. Do I think we're prepared when they come? I'm disappointed. I think the car should be lined up with a hang tag in it. And we have a hard job. Typical salesman would say he'd rather walk around because they don't always know what they want to buy. But I had recently at Christmas time in December, a customer applied a request on the internet to buy a car here at our Ford store. And we had the car parked in a certain spot. He said he was coming from Williamsburg, Virginia with his wife. And his wife told me that night, it was 7:30 at night in the dark and cold. She said, my husband said we were at the right place when we drove in. And then she said, you know that. How, do you want to know how? And I said, yes. She said, because the car was parked out front with a bow on it. Now, to get that kind of attention to detail, joking, there's a great book that people should read called One Word. And I had a dog, and my one word one year was detail. So my dog's name was Detail. So the devil lies in the detail. Then one year I had the word, this year it's discipline. You don't discipline your neighbor's children or your neighbor's pet. You discipline your own children because you care about them, right? Your own pet, because you want to get them run over by a car. So I think that the reading of the books helps us grow. And if you were an employer, you'd want people to say to having worked there, I'm a better person today.
I was going to say, for all your employees that, have kids, have children, and even for anyone else that's listening, how would you think about parenting like young kids today? Right. And I'd like to, if you could also relate this to, when you raise your kids, did you bring them to the dealership? Did you right away, put them to work to build that discipline? Like, how do you think about parenting in general?
I think with my daughter, I was lucky because I came to work on Sundays. And when I had my service station, I used to plow snow at night. I had a Jeep, and that was hard work. And I think I did a lot of mentoring with my daughter, and she's done a marvelous job. She's very involved in the image of her company, how we appear to the customer. She does a great job networking with women. But I think it was I think it goes back to parenting. I think it goes back to time spent and mentoring. Okay. So I think that's important.
Yeah, I have two daughters, super young, like toddlers. But I think about, the future for them, and you've obviously, your daughter is an exceptional operator in the business, at least from what I could tell from the outside. So you've obviously, was that now when she was growing in the business and there were much less women in the business, was that like taboo? Was that a bit, was that like a rougher transition? What was?
I think it was pretty early on. I wish there were more women in the business, because I think they have a different, kinder, Carter Myers, his daughter, Liza. I think I don't know if you follow her at all.
I'm familiar. I don't personally know her, but I've seen her name. And so maybe we got to get her on the podcast.
That's real good. Their company's an ESOP. And believe it or not, when I had my service station, I used to go to visit the Ford dealer in Doylestown, which I told you about. And Ford had a Ford dealer magazine, and there was a Pontiac dealer I used to visit with. And he gave me the General Motors Business Builders book. And through that, I read an article about Carter Myers II. So I made sure that I got to know Carter Myers. And Carter Myers is a true mentor. And he's done that with his daughter. She worked for American Honda, I don't know how many years before she came home. And now she's grown her father's business tremendously. And it's an ESOP company.
Yeah. So just to describe that to anyone listening, so you're referring to like employee stock option pool. So the employees actually have shares in the company.
Yes.
What do you think about that model? Do you think that we should see more of that?
Yeah. It's intrigued me. Now it would be fairly, I think, impossible for us because of our size. But if we just started, I think I sort of like the ESOP, but it has some negativities from what I gather. And I've read a lot about it. I visited with a bank. I thought pretty hard about it. And I think the funds have to be there. When we have a 401k, I'm pretty proud of our 401k. I should be able to tell you the total. I think it's about 21 million. But I do want to tell you something. We have an employee investment account, and employees can invest money with us. And that investment is not an investment. It's a pay down of our floor plan, and we pay them 7.5%. And this is a very proud thing for me. Ask me how much our employees have invested.
How much have your employees invested?
I'm glad you asked the question. There's $9 million yesterday. And that $9 million is 300 investors. at 30 rough. That's roughly 30,000 apiece. That has to say something about the confidence people have in us. And so I'm proud of the fact that we have healthy living, employee investment account, lunch and learns. We put out a healthy newsletter to our employees, and we've worked hard to control our healthcare costs. All these are our obligation to our fellow man.
You mentioned floor plan. So if you're leveraging a floor plan at your scale, given how long you've been in business, I have to imagine that you're getting a better return on that capital elsewhere.
Well, when I say, I'm trying to if I'm paying Ford Motor Credit 8%, let's say, or they're giving me that on a floor plan offset, and I give my employees 7%, it's pretty hard to go get a bank that will give you in and out with $100 at 7% or $3,000. So an employee can get the money out. So we use that money to reduce our floor plan and then pay the employee. So I think it's kind of unique, In other words, I think you'd want somebody to be able to tell that story about work here. So at least there's 300 people have enough faith to put that money back. Doesn't that say something to you? It says something to me as man.
Yeah, my prior company was an ESOP. So we had, get a card our peak, we had 200 employees. The biggest difference is that we were venture backed. So employees didn't have liquidity, right? Liquidity in a venture backed company is, when you sell or you go IPO. So that was, and I can tell you candidly that because there was no liquidity at our scale, we're still small, it was very tough to get, anyone besides like executive level, or call it even kind of senior managers, to really value the equity, right? It didn't have the effect that it intended. And, ESOP is super common in venture-backed companies. That's not anything novel.
Yes. And our own governor of Pennsylvania, Wolf, who's no longer governor, had a company and turned it into an ESOP and then wound up buying it back. And we looked at becoming an ESOP. The debt to get the tax benefits of it were so great that I don't think we could service the debt. I guess if you start out with it. And then the other thing, I think in what you just said, or what I think I heard, is you didn't have that liquidity. If you have a 401k, it's your money, and you're going to get it regardless of what happens to us. So if I was saving my money as an individual and a working man, I want it to be in my own account with my own name on it.
How do you approach business opportunities at your size and scale? Meaning, do you still get approached for all these different types of opportunities? Like, what does it take for you to say yes to an opportunity? How do you think about this?
Well, we have a thing called a buy box. And the buy box says we want something that we can, where we can go, and if we do a good job, make an effect on the community, people know who we are. And one of the things I dislike about our expansion is we don't affect some of the communities where we're at, because we live here. When we choose to go to church, we go to church here, we eat here. And I think that has a tremendous effect on our business. Just like if you hire somebody that lives an hour from home, eventually they're going to get tired of driving 2 hours a day. And when they get their check, we're going to do what anybody else does. If they're married, I say they're going to run home to mama. They're going to go home, because all men want to return home at night. And that money goes to another town an hour away, and we don't build the influence, sphere of influence that we can. So we want to be in communities where we can get to, try to get to know people, get some kind of a footprint, give back to, and also not just be investors. I don't want to be an investor. I want to build, for some quirky reason, and maybe that's my background of coming from nothing, but I want to build a brand. And we just went through the landscaping in Doylestown, and when you drive up and down the street, we have one business in a row that's not ours. It's not a car dealership. It's a Italian food market. I'd like to identify the street with the landscaping, so the street, our footprint of landscaping speaks to the customer. There are people that care about neatness, cleanliness, and respect for property. So we'd like to know that guys remembers us by our cleanliness, our attention to detail.
Do you travel ever often?
90% of my travel is to factory meetings.
Oh, I thought you were going to tell me West Palm because you mentioned it earlier in the conversation.
I've only been to the breakers 3 times, but all a result of a 20 group meeting or winning an award and going to the breakers. So if I go to the 20 group meetings, there's no, in the factory meetings, there's no time left to work, and I like to be around work as much as I can.
Yeah. Do you go to any other industry conventions, NADA, anything like that?
Go to NADA, didn't go this year. My daughter spoke a couple years ago at NADA, so I certainly went to that. But yes, we do. And we're a member of a 20 group. We're a member of a multi-dealer 20 group, and that's been beneficial to my growth.
Are there any questions you want to ask me?
What prompted you to do this show? I mean, I mentioned it earlier to you, nothing's good or bad until it's compared, and I wondered what I could have done better for you.
So to answer your first question, I mean, failure, right? Because you have to think about me. I was on the dealership track for over a decade. And I went from a traditional dealership, and then I built an online auto retailer, and I went much bigger, much quicker. And, when you go big, you can go really, really big, or you can fall really, really big. And we weren't able to differentiate enough in the marketplace at our peak. We had already raised, close to $60 million of capital. So we had to pivot. And I spent 2 years really trying to, pivot to private equity and figure out a way to profitability. But it didn't work out. And for the first time in my life, after sunsetting that business, I was faced in a position. I said, look, I took a big swing. It didn't work out, but I said, I can actually explore my curiosity. And I never actually had that opportunity. If you think about it, I started working on, the car lot when I was 14, right? 15, just like helping out, lot guy and all that stuff. So it was the first time in life where I could finally explore my curiosity. And I've always been interested in the marketing side of the business, right? So you mentioned, right, you love going and paying attention to that detail with the customer. For me, when I got onto that car lot, I would gravitate to the computer and I'd want to go to do some marketing thing, whether it was run a new Facebook ad or, put a new post online. Like that was what I gravitated towards. I just doubled down on that and said, let's just, start, talking about the industry. Try to solve a problem, which I believe is a lack of transparency in our industry. And so I just did that, and it grew, and here we are today. Have a very large influential audience within automotive. But it wasn't, I could tell you one thing for sure, it wasn't very intentional. I didn't plan it out for years. It kind of just happened, and it was compounded, like you said, to the point where I said, there's a real business opportunity here. I'm going to, evolve this into an actual media company.
Interesting. I think sometimes, ask me how we get, you didn't ask me this, but I want you to ask me this question. How did we get so big? And I don't think we're so big. We're small compared to others. We're a first generation, but ask me that question.
So how did you get so big?
I'm glad you asked. Okay. And these are lessons from the farm. I think we grew by staying small.
By focusing on the details.
Yeah. So I always say out local to locals. Okay. And growth comes from by staying small. Everything is details. I mean, every aviation accident you ever read about, I YouTube those a lot because very interested. And it's usually a detail. It's usually lack of doing something the right way.
Speaking of details, this is a perfect segue. So Brett Morgan, CEO of Morgan Auto Group, which I have to imagine you're familiar with, he posted a tweet the other day. He wrote, "Car dealers, you parachute into an underperforming store. What are the first 4 pieces of information that you will ask before you dig into the operation?" I want to ask you that question. What are those first 4 pieces that you would ask if you were in a situation?
I'd want to know about the leadership in the dealership, the longevity, the turnover. Okay. I'd want to know about the market and the sales penetration, the sales CSI, because some of those things are very difficult, and turnover and reputation is Man, we bought a Toyota store. I think there are 1,244 Toyota dealers, or 1,244, I think. And this was 1,242 and 1,241 in sales and service satisfaction. And that was not easy to overcome. Today, unfortunately, one at a time, okay? But today we're in the top 10%, and we've won the Toyota President's Award several times. But I think I'd look at the market. I'd want to know about the leadership team. And I think the leadership team is to, I can't give it a total right now. I should have it, but we look at all the time at our turnover in sales and parts and service. And when we have turnover in sales, hired in another one of our stores, right away it goes down to, I call it parenting. It goes down to leadership, okay? People don't quit jobs. People quit people.
Yep, I believe in that.
And I don't know how we get that across. I mean, this is not for the listening audience, this is a philosophical thing. But how do we understand that and understand our obligation to people? I mean, I guess some people don't give a hoot if you're a bad example, but I'd like somebody to say, having worked for Fred Beans, I'm a better person. That would be it. Because you want a legacy, and a legacy is not become how much you accumulate in life. It's what you leave behind. It's the mark you leave on other people, right?
And what's that mark that you want to leave? Is it just for people to really become better?
Well, better, but when people come in our dealership, let's say that we joked around and we said 50% of the people are going through domestic reorganization. That's a fair statement. And that's a lot of anxiety. And then you've got aging parents. People have a lot more of a struggle today, I think, than my generation earlier had, because households were, was not that, divorce wasn't that common. That reorganization wasn't that common. Choices whether you were a boy or a girl weren't that common. Maybe I just didn't know about it, okay? When I was 18 years old, I hitchhiked to California from Philadelphia to San Francisco. And that was a hell of an experience, but it was actually a good experience. Today, I don't think you'd want to hitchhike.
Yep, times have changed. Before we wrap up, is there any message? We have thousands of listeners across the industry. It's dealers, industry partners, vendors, Wall Street, consumers, enthusiasts. Any message you want to leave everyone listening with?
My message to me as an older guy that wants to leave a legacy is to be sure that and I haven't been as active, but active in our beliefs and active in helping our country be the place where we want it to be and the place we believe in it. I believe that America provided a tremendous opportunity for a lot of people. My generation, my parents, my grandparents, I think we're fortunate to be here, and I think we should work hard. I call it today when I come to work, I want to polish the blue oval every day. But I don't want to lower the American flag. I want to raise the American flag. And I want to speak out to my local politicians and let them know how I feel if they're not doing what I think they should do. Such an untrust today in the news. I heard my wife say last night when I was having dinner, there's an untrust in the news. There's an untrust in our political candidates, both sides, our news, right, which is correct, and which is Photoshop, let's say. Right?
Where do you consume your news? Like what platforms, TV channels, or where do you consume your news?
Well, I read the Wall Street Journal because I like the Wall Street Journal a lot because I call it the good newspaper. It's not about somebody molesting their next door neighbor, child, or shooting a neighbor. There used to be things in the Journal that aren't there today that I miss. And that was, by the way, if you Google Fred Beans Wall Street Journal, you'll see a good little article. It'll at least make you smile, okay? Just Google Wall Street Journal Fred Beans.
Oh, wow. Look at that. Push-ups in the dealership. God bless you. Do you work out?
So I worked out. I'm joking because I wouldn't work out because I'm basically a workaholic and lazy, but I have a trainer that comes to my house twice a week. If he didn't come to my house, I wouldn't do it.
I love it. Fred Beans, thanks for coming on.
My pleasure. Thank you.
This episode is brought to you by my very own car dealership guy news. CDG News is here to help you stay updated on all things automotive. We're not your typical news crew. We're bringing you concise, unbiased car industry news in easy to digest formats. From the hottest headlines to podcast summaries, dealership best practices, and industry insights, we've got it all covered. And guess what? It's all free, no paywalls, just like we always promise. Hop over to cdg.news, that's cdg.news, and check us out. We're all ears for your feedback. Tell us what you need. Give us your honest thoughts. We're here to deliver real value. So don't wait. Head to cdg.news now or click the link in the show notes below.
All right. Hope you enjoyed that episode. Please give the podcast a rating, consider subscribing to the show, and check the show notes for links to what we talked about. Thanks for tuning in. I'll see you guys next time.